Welcome. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to this Unify webinar about consuming web services with .NET apps, of course, team developer .NET apps. I'm your host and speaker, Martin Teetz. A few things about Unify at the beginning. Unify is in the database and development tools business for more than 30 years and has created a lot of industry-first products like Data Server, the first Unix SQL database, Excel, the first Unix 4GL, SQL Base, the first DOS and Windows SQL database, SQL Windows, the first Windows 4GL, and then Team Developer, the first Windows 32-bit 4GL. That was probably before Microsoft even had Visual Studio and things like that. Unify not only does databases and tools, also does Access1 archiving solutions, Dages e-discovery solutions, Oracle Forms to Java migration, and Lotus Notes to .NET migration. If you're interested in any of those, please go to our website and find the according information. I'm Martin Teetz, your Unify product manager. I'm more than 10 years with Unify. I'm doing, as part of my work, the product plans for Team Developer, SQL Base, Excel, Data Server, and NXJ. And now we are going to talk about Team Developer 6.1, of course, today. The major benefits of TD 6.1 are three. First, the new high productivity IDE, and you will see that when I'm doing the demos today, how that looks. The new enhanced high usability GUI controls. There's a number of new GUI things available, like a new charting control, enhanced grid with a summary bar, and other things. If you're interested to see how those work, go to our website and see the recorded webinars on YouTube, and you will. There's several sessions on that available on YouTube. And powerful new .NET integration that allows you to leverage your investments in Team Developer code on one side, and if you did investments in other .NET code on the other side. TD code basically means you can take your business logic now and provide your business logic as .NET web services. And that's something that I presented in last month's webinar. Today we are going to talk about how you can consume web services from .NET applications. So basically a step-by-step guide to consuming web services from .NET apps. I will show you how you use the new .NET Web Services wizard. Talk a bit about the internals of the web service wizard. Of course, we will be calling web services from .NET apps, including demonstrations from easy to more complex. I will explain in detail the primitive and complex data types you can use in TD, including demonstrations on how they work. We'll talk about exception handling when consuming web services. Talk about security when consuming services. Then do a demo using or consuming a public weather web service. And then also a larger demo of consuming the World Factbook, which is a set of web services that we host and that I'm consuming today from here. And then, of course, question and answers. So the step-by-step guide to consuming web services. What you get is, what you have to do is when you want to consume web services, the first thing you need to have is have access to the WSDL URL. And the WSDL URL, if you enter that into your browser, then the web service will display the WSDL in your browser, which is an XML document. And you just copy the URL of that web service and paste that URL into the new web service wizard of Team Developer. Next step is you provide an output path for the files that Team Developer will create from that web service WSDL file. And when you're done so, it will generate the Interop assembly, Interop Excel file, taking into account a namespace that you might have provided. And then you will be able to create a front-end application that consumes web services like this one here with this screenshot, and we will look at this application a bit later. So, .NET Web Services Wizard. From a TD.NET application, go to the menu, Tools, select Web Services. See that there on the right on the screenshot? That is the menu item you need to click on. Then you need to provide the WSDL of the web service. This can be a URL or a local file. So if you have a local file, if you have a WSDL file on your machine, you can use that, or you can provide a URL. Here it is. Here in this screenshot, I'm using a URL. And also, if you're using authentication to get access to the WSDL, then you can provide user ID and password here. So this authentication is for the WSDL, not for consuming a web service. Click Next then, and then you go to the step 2 and provide output details. Specify the output path, the Interop assembly name, which is a .NET assembly, basically a DLL file that will be created by the wizard, and an AXL file name, team developer symbol import file, which will be included in the open application. And that symbol import file is basically a definition, XML definition of all the classes that are available in the web service DLL. And having that AXL included, you can directly call web service operations as if they were local functions or local methods of classes. Specify the Interop namespace, you've seen this before, and then press the Generate button. The Interop assembly is generated, so this is how it looks when it has done everything and worked good. The AXL file is included in the open app, and that means that in the definitions of Team Developer, if you look at external assemblies, then you have a list of all the web services you have included, and including all the operations. In this case here, there are several operations like get all countries, get region by code, get country map, get country flag. Those will return a flag image of a given country, for example. So those are the operations, and you can simply call these operations over web services from your team web service from your TD code. So when you're coding the consumer, you don't really need to know that this is that you are calling a web service actually. A few words about the internals of the .NET Web Services wizard. The wizard generates an Interop assembly, a .dll file from the WSDL that has been provided. It creates the same .NET classes that Visual Studio would generate, so it's using the exact same .NET technology that Microsoft Visual Studio is using. The generated Interop assembly contains a class that is encapsulating the web service with all its operations. That's what you have seen on the previous slide with all the operations below the web service. And dynamically generated classes for complex types described in the WSDL. If you have complex data types, and we will be talking about that in detail a bit later, then you get a number of classes or methods that give you access to the complex data types, which actually is really easy to use, but you need to know how that works. The generated AXL contains the web service class with all its operations, definition, and access methods for used complex types. So once the AXL is in your app, you're ready to use a web service. The benefits of TD web services: all low-level communications is handled or are handled automatically. That means you don't have to care about HTTP, HTTPS, sending XML documents back and forth. All that is being done automatically. You just access the variables and you pass parameters to a web service call, and you get back data. And that data will either be primitive data types that will be available in TD right away, or complex data types that you might need to use methods on that I will show you in a minute. So the client only needs to call the operations exposed in the web service, which is really nice and easy and is a kind of 4GL approach to consume web services. So with step 5 then, consume the web service. Instantiate and call any exposed operations. So basically you create a variable of that class, and then you can call variable.operation, and you're ready to call the web service. So here's the symbol file include of a web service, for example, and then you have the variable definition of a web service class, OTest in this example. And then when somebody clicks on the PP string button, you call otest.inoutString and pass to that web service operation, you pass a data field with a string in it. So a data field with string data type. And that then is being set into a different data field. So this is a screenshot of a sample application that I will show you later. Basically what that application does, you have on the left side, you have a number of fields in the different data types TD has, and then by clicking on any of the buttons, you invoke a web service, and basically it passes the value that's on the left side to the web service, and then gets back from the web service the value that has been passed. So if bool is checked, then it will return, the web service will return boolean is true. The same for date and so on. For binary, as you see, that you can move an image back and forth with web service as well. So in this case, the sample that you see there, on some click of that button, it's basically calling a string or passing a string to a web service method and receiving a string. Demo, consuming a simple web service. What I want to do is retrieve contracts from the island contact table. For that, I need the URL and the WSDL of the web service. Actually, this web service is hosted on my local machine here. And then I want to write a little application that retrieves friends from the island database. And the web service actually, as you see, has a parameter, and you pass it a value that will be used in the like evaluation of the SQL. So you can enter % or S% or things like that, and then it will create the SQL and return only friends that start with an S or so. So something really simple, but something nice to get started and understand how that works. Oops, sorry. So I thought I can click on this and would open my application, but now let me open Internet Explorer here and go to the WSDL of this web service, which is the friends WSDL here. So this is what I need to. Let me copy that URL here that I will use in a TD application then, and then also let me go into the web service testing mode of this web service. And what you see here is from a web browser, I can test the TD web service by passing a parameter. Like, I explained to you, I can say, like %, I want all my friends. And if I call that web service, then a new tab opens and I get back a string variable that contains, all the email addresses of all my friends. And of course, I can go back and say, I just want the friends that start with S. And if I do that, then the list is much smaller, of course. And the web service returns the right string here. And I want to leverage the functionality of this web service from a new team developer application and basically create an application that you have seen the screenshot of before. So I'll go back to the WSDL. If you look at the WSDL, this is the web service definition. Don't really need to understand that. What you really need to get is the URL of this. Copy this again. And now I'm going to open TD. and write that little application that you can see in the background there. So the first thing I need to do is set this to a .NET application. Let's start with a brand new empty application. So you see now at the bottom here in the toolbar, it says it's a .NET build target. So in 6.1, we have added this little indicator here that you know what build target you are creating here. So now go to the Tools menu and choose the Web Services wizard. And the first thing you have to do here is provide the URL of the web service that you want to consume. So this one is hosted on my local machine, and the WSDL is that. There's no login required to retrieve the WSDL. Just press next. Now I have to provide an output path for the files, and I have to be careful here so I get the right directory and I know where all this stuff is and works together. .NET web service, yeah. So I'm okay with the web service DLL name, the AXL file name, and the Interop space name. I really don't care about. I just press generate here. And now it has generated that. And you see in TD itself now, I have my web service, this new class here. And basically this is my friends thing here. Returns a string and takes a string parameter. This is the call to my web service that I want to call now. Now this application here is totally empty. And for this to work, I need to save this application now so it finds the DLLs that I have created, because those DLLs are not in the path. Let me use text and vs.app override, yes. So now I'm creating a brand new application that has that AXL file included here. And now let me create a window, a new form window. In this form window, I want to have a push button, basically, a push button that executes the web service. So call this get friends. Now this web service takes as input a parameter, a string parameter, and I want to have a data field that I can use to pass the input parameter to that web service. So that's where I put then the % or S% or whatever. And then the output of the web service I want to display in a multi-line field. Draw that here. And then on attribute inspector, data length, give this a bit more space, and switch on word wrap so you see a bit of this. And now I just do a double click on this button here to go to the on-them click of that button. And now at the next level, what I do is set. And what I want to do is set the contents of the multi-line field ML1 equals to, sorry, I forgot one thing. Probably figure that out. I need to create a variable of the web service class first, an instance. So my web service, my friend's web service as a variable name. And then here I can do my friend's web service dot my friends and pass df1 into that. And that's really all you have to do to call a web service here. See, you generate the AXL file, create an instance of the class, and call the web service. That's it. And save this and run it. Now, if I provide a % here, you see it's retrieving all the names from the web service. So it's working. Create the first simple TD.NET web service consumer, and you can see it is really, really easy. Just instantiate the web service and call it. So that was the first demonstration. Go back to the slides here, and let's talk about data types. There's two types of data types. There's primitive data types and complex data types. And first talk about the primitive ones, because those are the easiest ones to handle in TD. And here's a bit of background information about that. First, the binary data type, directly accessible from TD binary data type. So there's no conversion or nothing you have to do to, if you get back a binary value from a web service, or if you pass a binary value to a web service, you can simply put in the TD binary variables or fields that contain binary data without any conversion. This is how it's defined in the WSDL, just for your information. And in the TD code, you can see that on the second line, set sbin out equals otest.in out bin sbin in. So it just passes all the TD variables here without having to do any encoding, data type changing, or anything like that. The same is true for Boolean, directly accessible from the team developer Boolean data type. You just pass in and out Boolean values from a web service call. And the same is true for string as well. You just pass in and out strings. Those can be, of course, data fields with string data type or variables with string data type. A few more primitive data types. Date time. Date time actually is interesting because in this case, I think my header is wrong. It's not a primitive data type. That's actually a more complex one already, because date time is set up having two different things in the data type sal date time, which includes the date time value and the is null flag. So two things come across when you pass a date time value, and such you need to do some handling on that. And what you need to do here is you can see that on the second line of code there, that df out date equals sal date out dot value. That dot value is the value of the date time. That is how you can access the value of the date time parameter of a web service. And you can also set the value putting like sal date out dot value equals date time. So this is how you work with date time and with numbers, because they are both sal decimal and sal date time complex types internally in TD, and you need to handle them using the sal date value methods. So consuming complex data also means you can consume UDVs and UDV arrays. Now this is where it's getting really interesting. Basically, this is the WSDL, and if you look at the WSDL, let me switch on my highlighter again here. You see there's several elements in that functional class: a binary one, a Boolean one, sal date, sal decimal, and a string one. No, there's a number of things that are being passed in a UDV, for example, in this example here. And what you do, you create again a window, an instance variable of that UDV, and then you set the single values of the UDV members, and this line here basically calls the web service, and then after that you retrieve the values from the web service. That's how you'd handle complex data types, UDVs. And the same is true for UDV arrays. You basically, before calling the web service, you would have multiple lines. You would set O complex in dot bin element 0 equals, and then element 1, and then element 2, and so on. And you can then pass and receive UDV arrays. And I will show you that in an example very soon. Here we go. Access the WSDL from the ASP.NET Web Service ASMX handler. That's what I'm going to show you as a first step. And then in TD, I will generate the web service interop through the .NET Web Service Wizard. And the web service wizard will, of course, include the generated AXL into the application. And in this application, then we will have the web service interop instantiated, and there is the calls of operations passing in and out primitive and complex data types. And that is really this application here. Need to change the pointer. So I will generate part of this application. I don't have time to code all this, but creating the web service interface that I can show, and the rest I will explain for you. So I click on this one, and I should get the open application here. But as a starting point, I really, again, want to go to Internet Explorer and look at the WSDL interface. Now that's the the testing interface for this web service. So again, in this case, this web service that shows how to work with data types is hosted on my local machine. And you see this web service has several operations: in-out array complex, in-out bool, in-out complex, in-out datetime, in-out number, in-out string. So if I want to test in-out string, I can provide a string parameter and then call this web service. And the web service basically takes that input parameter and passes it back to the calling application in a string variable, as you can see. And that works for all the different operations that I have here that are for different primitive data types and different complex and array of complex data types. And the WSDL of this guy here is $WSDL. This is the WSDL of this web services that I'm going to use now. So copy this URL here, and now I'm going back to the TD application. This TD application basically is the ready application, but it does not have the web service AXL included yet. So the web service wizard did not run yet, and I want to do that again. Go to the web service wizard, provide the URL of the web service. Don't have a user ID and password for the WSDL. Next, then provide an output path for all this. That is web service data types consumer. Okay. And then generate. Now this creates the DLL, the AXL, and when I press OK, it will include the AXL again into the application. And now you can see you have this in-out bool, in-out bin, in-out datetime, in-out string, in-out number, in-out complex, in-out array of complex. Those are the operations of the web service that are defined in the WSDL I provided. And the application now calls these web servers. Let me show you quickly this screen here. This is exactly what you see in my screenshot. But now let's run this so you get an idea of what this does. And then I will go into the code and explain how it does that. So basically what you have a number of data types on the left, and you have that Boolean in-out method, and if you pass a true, you get back a true. If you pass this date, you get back this date. The same for number. If you use a different number, you get back the different number, of course. You can invoke the string, get back the string, the same for the binary. So those are single operations now for a single data type. But now it's getting more interesting when I clear all these fields again and invoke a complex in-out. Now what the application contains is basically a UDV that contains all these different data types here. And what I'm doing now is I'm calling the operation that has as input parameter a UDV and as an output parameter or a return value as well, that UDV. And I just press that and get all the values right away. So you see that invoking complex, invoking web service with UDVs as parameters does work. Now, clear these fields again, and now I want to do that with an array of complex. Array of complex means that several instances of this data will be sent to the web service and will be received by the client again. So if I send an array of complex, I see the first array member here, and then I do again clear fields, go to the next array element, and see the small values. And now let me show you the code of how that works. So in the form window, let's see, for the date single value, you see that I'm passing a sal date in, which is a UDV variable for a date that is being used in web service consuming, and get back that same thing. This type here again is the same, and then with this one here, sal date out.value, I'm actually retrieving the value from and putting that into the df out data field. That's the let's say complex TD data type for dates. If you look at just a number value, was it number? It was complex as well. Yeah, for number you have to do that complex, the value thing as well. And string is direct. If you look at string, you see, it's just that set the data field and return the value from the web service right into the data field. So these are pretty easy. Now let's look at the complex data type. Actually, those are not very complicated either. What's being done is the picture is being loaded into a variable, the Boolean is loaded into a variable, and so the single values, the single members of the UDV are being filled with data. And then here this line calls the web service, and oComplexOut contains, receives the return. And then you just get, all the return values and set the data fields apparently. So here again you see how the value function, how the value method works. For Boolean and string, it's just a direct assignment. So pretty easy to use UDVs as parameters for web service as well. Now let's have a look at the PB array complex. It's a little bit more complicated, but also not so much more complicated. So basically what I'm doing is the same thing as before, only that I'm filling two elements of a complex of an array of UDVs here. Element 9 and element 10 of that array of UDV array are being filled with the oComplex in UDV members. Then I'm calling the web service, and I get back the web service, and you see I'm filling the data fields with returned element number 9. Now what I did show you is that the number 9 returned, and then I did clear all fields and did press the PB next element button. And when I press the next element, what I just do is retrieve the values out of array element 10 and put them into the data fields that display the values. So this is how this works. I think it's a nice and easy to use implementation of consuming web service, including pretty complex UDVs and array of UDV data that you can easily use. And what I will do is tomorrow upload this sample to the TD community, so you can use that as well if you're part of the beta group of TD 6.1. If not, and you want to become a member of the TD 6.1 beta test, go to the TD community and see how you can register for that. Okay, so let's close this again. This is primitive and complex data types. Now let's talk a little bit about exception handling. You need to do .NET exception handling for consuming web services. And basically that means you need to use the new when exception and exception statements. Those allow allowed to trap any exception and act on the exception. What you can do, of course, is ignore it, swallow the exception, or process the exception. The usage is similar to when SQL error, and every exception in the web service is thrown as a SOAP exception to the client. If any code inside the consumed web service throws itself an exception, of course, and the exception is not handled by the web service. So if something's going wrong in the web service remotely and isn't handled remotely, then it will be told to the client that something has gone wrong, and you need to handle that exception that you are getting. So it's standard.NET exception handling using the when exception statement. And in the web service provider, there is a method called SAL throw SOAP fault, which can be used to raise an exception, and this will then be thrown to the client, and the client can react on that SAL throw SOAP fault. So here you see a little piece of code, and basically the when exception code is the interesting one. When an exception occurs, then we call SAL get last exception and display a message box, and that something went wrong. So that's really easy, actually. Security. That's another thing that you could come across when using web services. Foremost, when you're using web service in your domain, or if you want to provide web services to a select customer group and don't want to have those publicly available, you should think about having web services using HTTPS security, SSL security encryption. But that is totally transparent. So what you can see from our previous slides, all the low-level communications are handled by the generated Interop assembly. The client only had to call the operations exposed in the web service, and it didn't even look like he's calling any remote things. Security is totally transparent, like using proxy servers, SSL, authentication. So that is all being handled automatically and should just work. And the only thing you need to do is, if you're using authentication for consuming web services, so if the web service itself is protected by a password and username, you have a new SAL method, SAL WS set credentials, which allow you to set the credentials when before you consume a web service. So that's basically all there's to tell about security when consuming web services. Okay, here's another demo. A public weather web service, public airport weather web service. This website here, webservicex.net, provides a number of free public web services that you can consume and try and play around with. This specific operation expects a country and a city as parameter and returns a string containing the weather in XML format. So what you get is a single string that contains XML data, which is not very common for web services, but that's how this specific web service works. And I do have an application that looks like this one here. On the left side, you provide the city, a country, and then press the Get Weather button, and then in the multi-line field, you get the response, which is a string variable, and that string variable happens to contain XML text. And then I'm using system.xml, the .NET Framework XML classes to extract the XML data into these data fields here. But that's really not part of things you need to do with web services usually. Just if web services return XML string data in XML format. So here's my application. And let me again first open Internet Explorer, and I'll show you the public interface to that, the weather web service. Now we're really going to the Internet, and this web service many times isn't really fast. So what you see here is a window in the WSDL of that web service. And basically this web service provides two operations: get cities by country. You parse a country, and then you get all the cities. and get weather. I'm only using the get weather operation. If you click on that get weather operation, I hope it's doing something. Seems to be a bit slower. Yeah, here it goes. That's basically the testing page that opens in a frame here below. And for that, to test that web service, you just enter a city name. It's your Sacramento country name, United States. And when I invoke that, a new tab opens that shows the result. And that particular web service, as I told you, isn't very quick, really. Especially when United States starts to work, then there seems to be quite high load on this. So what you get, you see, and you see that it's just one string that you get back, and that string is, formatted in XML format, and that there's several XML data entries or elements that define how the weather in Sacramento is. So, and exactly that I'm going to use in my application here. In my weather app libraries, you see I have a global weather.axl included, external assemblies. If I look at the global weather here, get weather, and you see the get weather takes two parameters, and one is the country and the other is the city. Now let's look at that window here, layout. That's exactly what you've seen on the screenshot again. This button invokes the web service. You pass and if you do a click on that, I just pass the city and the country data field to the weather web service. See, that's really all you have to do to call a web service. Now let's run this. Now I can really put in things. I just saw that somebody wanted to have the weather in Oslo. I hope that's available. Oslo, Norway, I hope that's right. Yes, that is available. So, see, the web service did return the XML string, which is displayed in that multi-line field. And then I'm doing some XML treatment using system.xml from the .NET framework to extract the values out of that XML string, which is not part of that web service, of course. So that is a nice example of using a remote, really freely available web services. Then let's continue with that presentation. The next demonstration is the World Factbook web service. The World Factbook web service is based in the host of that is being hosted in Roseville, California. I'm sitting here in Munich, Germany, and I'm going to consume that host. And that host provides operations like a list of countries, country flag. So I can tell that web service I want to get back the country flag of Switzerland, the country flag of Norway, the country flag of the United States or Germany or of the European Union. I can get back a country map. And the country descriptions that you see on the screenshot at the bottom, like introduction, geography, people, government, economy. And that data is actually coming from the CIA website, which has, available information about many countries in the world. So what I'm going to show you now is the teamdeveloper.net client that will use the, those operations that are being hosted in Roseville. Let me open the TD application. And then go back again to the browser first. The World Factbook interface here, seen from a browser. So this browser interface only works if those are .NET web services. but most of these are TD web services. That's no problem at all. So you see all the operations that this World Factbook web services provide, and there's things like get all countries, and if you call that, it doesn't work. It doesn't have a remote call interface. Get country, where is it? Get country code. This one works remotely. So, for example, Norway, and then I should get back a country code from the web service, and the country code is NO. That doesn't necessarily need to be any. That's probably something that the CIA has defined for themselves. And then I can do a get country flag, but the flag data would be displayed as hex data, so it doesn't really make sense to get that. Get category then is the text description of the country. So if I use Norway for the country code and got category introduction and invoke that, then I get an introduction on Norway. This web service or this operation supports other things as well, like I want to know military information about Norway. Then it tells me some military information about Norway. And I could do the same for the European Union, get military information, and then I get the military information for the European Union. So you get the idea of that web service, and again, I don't need to show you the WSDL because that's really boring seeing that XML file. Here's the application that consumes all that. And let me run this first so you see it. Now again, the web servers are hosted in California, and I'm accessing them from Munich, and I'm not in any VPN, so that's working through the open internet now. And I can click on any country here in that list. You remember that get countries was one of the calls available as an operation. So what this application does first is fills this list box with a list of countries from that web service, and then if you click on a specific country, it retrieves all the information like country code, flag, map, and all the details here from that web service. And you can click through those, and the moment you click on a tab, it goes to the web service and retrieves that data. So that's not preloaded. It's the moment I click on this that it's going to get that data from the web service. So it's pretty quick, actually. Now, of course, I can select other countries. I can select the European Union, which is, might become a country sometime. And then, all this works again. I can click on a map, and it will explode that. So an interface to all the operations, basically, that web service provides. Now have a look at this form window World Factbook. So the list box CB countries. On them click. If I click on a country, then all the other fields are being populated from different web servers, and you see there's several web service operations that are being called to fill the screen when you click on a country in that list box. So that is pretty much, let's have a look at the global declarations. External assemblies. Here's the generated web service, World Factbook. And here you can see the helper class for SAL decimal, for example. So that one of these elements is passing or receiving a SAL decimal data type. So that's why that helper method is available here. So get region by code, parameter string, get country flag, string, and so on. So this is what I'm using here. Quite nice example of all this. Okay. So we are in the question and answer session, and I would like to ask you to put your questions into the WebEx chat or question tool so I can answer them. One of the questions is, hi Martin, is it possible to set a timeout in case the web service is very slow? I don't have an answer for you really, because that's all handled by the .NET system. I would need to ask our engineers about how that works. So I can tell you. Can a single app consume multiple web services? Yes, a single app can consume as many web services as it wants. You just have to create all the Interop DLLs for that, and then you can call all these different web servers from within a single application. Here's a question. Can you set up the web service consuming client in more detail, like choose a service endpoint, etc.? If you know more about how .NET does all this web service providing and consuming, yes. But our goal was to create that as easy as possible, and with so that it's really easy to call web services and easy really to manage those. And I think that's what we achieved here. All right, if there are no more questions, then I wish you all a Merry Christmas and very happy New Year 2012. And I'm looking forward to work with you and do presentations and talk to you next year. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.